Hi everyone, and welcome to our second session on Scratch. At the end of the last session I showed you this image. Using the algorithm we put together for our square, we're going to try to create this shape by making a few adjustments to our code. Let's have a look at our code from the last session. Something you've probably noticed when looking at the algorithm we put together is that there's a lot of repeated code. For example, we have a move 100 here, followed by a wait 1 second, a turn left by 90, and then another wait. This bit of the code is repeated 4 times here, then again here, and finally at the bottom. We need to find a more optimized way to produce our code. If we click the control category on the left hand side, there's a block called repeat, and this is the block we're going to use. We can change the number on the block to tell Scratch how many times we want to repeat a section of code. Then the code we want to repeat goes within the block. If we go back to the main stage area for a moment, I'm going to click the second move block, keep my mouse button pressed, and move my cursor to the side. You can see all the blocks below it remain attached. I'm going to drag these code blocks all the way to the left and release my mouse button to delete them. The code that we have left will move Scratchy forward 100 and then turn left by 90, giving us one side of the square. Next, I'm going to click and drag on the remaining move block and place these blocks just off to the side as we'll need them shortly. Click on the control category on the left hand side if it isn't already selected, and in this section you'll see the repeat block that we were speaking about. Drag this out to our main stage and snap it to the bottom of our pen down block. We now need to put our code that we placed to the side within the repeat block, like so. As we want this section of code to repeat 4 times for each side of the square, click the input on the repeat block, delete the value and enter the number 4. Also, from the control category, place a wait for 1 second code block beneath our repeat loop that we've just created. If your code looks like mine, press the green flag and you should see the square being drawn by Scratchy in the output window, just like before. If we take another look at the shape we're attempting to create, I can show you how Scratchy draws it. You'll see that Scratchy draws a square, and when he gets to the end, he makes a slight turn before drawing another. He repeats this process over and over until he has the shape completed and he's back where he started. If we go back to our code, let's get the blocks we need into the main stage area first, attach them, and then we'll worry about the values we have to enter into each block afterwards. As we saw, when Scratchy finished drawing a square, he made a slight turn before drawing the next one, so we're going to need to add a turn block. Selecting the motion category on the left hand side, choose the turn right block and snap this to the bottom of our algorithm. If we think ahead, Scratchy is going to draw another square, then turn a little. He'll then draw another square and turn a little again. It sounds like we have code that's being repeated multiple times, doesn't it? As we've discussed, we need to use a repeat block if there are times where we need the same bit of code to be repeated. But where shall we put the repeat block and what code should we put inside of it? Pause the video, have a think about how you would approach this problem, and when you have an answer, play the video again and see if your answer is correct. So how did you find that? It was a difficult task, so don't worry if you didn't get it completely correct. I'll show you what I came up with. Selecting the control category, I'm going to drag a repeat block out to the main stage and hover my mouse just below the pen down block. If you keep the mouse button pressed down, you will see a shadow appears that wraps around all of our code from the pen down block right to the bottom. If you can't see it, you may have to move your cursor around a little, but when you do, release the button and your code should look like mine. Before we start talking about the numbers that we need to put into our newly created blocks, I may have found something in our code that doesn't work as we intended, and you may have already picked up on this yourself. If I run the code, stop it midway through the algorithm, and restart it, notice how Scratchy starts drawing the squares at a different location. If I want him to start in the middle facing to the right, can you think what we need to do and what code blocks we'll need, and also where we'll need to put them? If we go to the motion category, you'll see there's a block called Go to XY with values that we can change. Click and drag this block out onto the main stage and put it beneath when the green flag clicked block. In the output window, there is an X and Y axis that cross at the center like this. Even though we're unable to see it, this is what Scratchy uses to move himself around the screen. Where the two axes cross is called the origin. The value of X at the origin is 0, and the value of Y is also 0. If I move Scratchy to a different part of the window, we can now see that our value of X has changed to 100, and Y is also 100, and you can see that just below the window. As we want him to start in the middle, we need to use the origin coordinates, which were x0, y0. Now that we have Scratchy starting in the centre, we also need to make sure he's facing right. There's a block called Point in Direction within the motion category. Drag this block out to the main stage and place it beneath the Go to XY block. The default value in this block is 90, and this is the value we want, so we'll leave it as it is. If we now look at our code, we can see that every time we press the green flag, Scratchy will go to coordinates x0 and y0 and face in the direction of 90 degrees. So now if I run my code, stop it again midway through the algorithm, and then press the green flag again, Scratchy will now jump to the center and face right as expected. So what are these repeat blocks doing in our code? Let's take a look. The inner repeat block is responsible for drawing our square. We repeat it 4 times for each side of the square. And after each square, we're going to turn a certain amount before we start drawing our next square. The outer repeat block tells Scratchy how many squares we want to draw. It's now time to decide what numbers we need to put into our newly created repeat and turn blocks. We first need to decide how many squares we want Scratchy to draw. I'm going to start with a low number and for the moment suggest you follow along with my example. I'm going to get him to draw 10 squares. So in the repeat block I'm going to enter the number 10. Now we need to do a little bit of maths to figure out what number of degrees we need to turn each time we've drawn a square so that we end up with the squares spaced evenly apart. By the time that we've finished drawing all of our squares, we want Scratchy to have rotated 360 degrees back to where he started. So we know that each of the 10 squares have to be placed evenly around a 360 degree path. So if we divide 360, which is our degrees, by 10, the number of squares we want to make, we get 36 degrees. So after each square is drawn, we need to turn right by 36 degrees. In Scratch, click the input box on the turn right block and enter 36. Now click the green flag and see what happens. Remember to let it fully run. For this part of the video I've increased the speed. Yours will go slower, but I want you to see how Scratchy draws and overlaps each of the shapes. We'll look at increasing the drawing speed of your one shortly. This is a shape we should all see, and if this is what you're getting in your output window, well done. If not, check your code is the same as mine and then run it again. So, how many degrees would we need to turn if we were to draw 20 squares? Pause the video again and try and calculate what you think the answer would be. Don't forget, we need to change the outer repeat block from 10 to 20 to draw 20 squares, and then enter the number of degrees you calculated in the turn right block. So, what did you come up with? Remember we said that if we need to rotate a full 360 degrees, we need to divide that by the number of squares we want to make. So 360 divided by 20 is 18. So your outer repeat block should have an input of 20 and your turn right should have an input of 18. As we're getting Scratchy to draw more squares than before, it's going to take some time to do that with the wait blocks we've included. Rather than deleting them, go through your code and change every wait block to 0 seconds. Once you've done that, click the green flag to see Scratchy draw the shape. That looks perfect. Why not have a go at trying to see if you can make each of the squares a different colour using the pen block tools? I'll put a suggestion of how I would go about doing it right at the end of the video, but your solution may be different. If you get the desired output with each square being a different colour, that's great, you've completed the task. That's it for this session. I know it's been a bit more difficult than our first one, but we've covered lots of new concepts and you've done really well. I hope you've enjoyed yourself and you'll join me next time. Just before I end the video completely, I thought I'd show you a solution to getting each square a different colour and explain a little bit about why it works the way it does. As you can see from the solution on the left hand side, I've added a change pen colour by 5 just before each square is drawn. In Scratch, the pen colour can be represented by a number. For this task, it doesn't really matter what number represents what colour, but each time we come to this block, we add 5 to the pen colour and that changes the colour very slightly. This in turn gives us a nice rainbow effect, as you can see in the output image to the right. This task was extremely difficult, and if you were able to complete it, very well done. If you weren't able to, don't worry, that's absolutely fine. Just have fun experimenting with your program, and I hope you're able to come up with some interesting designs.